Unfortunately, I almost always forget to take a before video or photo or whatever. But what I'm doing today is some maintenance on my oldest tree planting at this property. So this row of trees is more or less going north-south, and so that is east in that direction. So we've got some pretty tall primarily black locust and some black cherry right to the east of this planting. There's 3 rows of persimmons and pawpaws in here with a bunch of other stuff, asparagus and things like that. And this used to be an old annual field, and over here you can see the ground goes up. It's very rocky, full of boulders. They didn't cultivate this part of the field, so it got kind of grown up in mugwort, goldenrod, blackberries, black locusts, multiflora rose, all of the fun, super prickery stuff. So I cut the trees down about this far, so about maybe 30-40 feet off of the last row years ago, and they keep growing back, of course. And as you can see, they get used extensively for mulching the beds here. 2 or 3 times a year, I'll usually chop them up and feed them to the soil here. And some of the larger shoots, the larger stems, I'm cutting down, and I'm gonna be making a fence with this amount of material. You know, I've been working for an hour with the chainsaw, and you generate a lot of slash, and there are a lot of great uses for it. As I've shown in previous videos, you can use it to protect trees. You can cut it up into small pieces for fertility. But when you've got this volume, that would take a really long time. Not that it's impossible, but I think what I'm gonna do instead, in this case, is I'm going to, it's really hard to see now because it's so overgrown, but on the ridge, going north-south, parallel to that last row of trees over there, I'm gonna weave everything into a fence here. So stump sprouts of locust will be growing through the fence. Hopefully, it'll become impenetrable to wildlife, which actually won't be too difficult. They don't like super uneven footing. Wildlife meaning deer only. Of course, smaller animals will be able to go through it no problem, but it'll allow me to use all of this material without having to go rent a chipper. I could biochar it, but I don't even feel like doing that. So I'm gonna basically have this fence here as a repository. I guess that's a little bit of a fancy word. More or less a long pile of thorny material that I don't want to deal with in a more thoughtful way, but that hopefully will serve a purpose by forcing the deer not to go through this section, and could eventually have plans of this large block of black locust is growing out of a hillside, which I had envisioned as a potential pig paddock at some point. I haven't had pigs here on the property for a while, but I could do in that spot to deal with some forced floor disturbance and potentially replanting after they move through there. So this would potentially serve as part of the fence there, although this kind of fence, I've actually never tried. Even a really, really dense brush fence with lots of thorns, I don't know if that would be enough for a pig. I'm guessing that I probably would end up putting other fencing in there as well. But point being, if you are generating more slash than you can possibly deal with in terms of chopping up into little pieces by hand, you don't want to rent a chipper and whatever, a brush wall is another way of achieving that, and I'll show a video of what it looks like after I'm done. I'm not gonna lie to you, that was fairly rugged work. All of this is rows with these pretty gnarly thorns and black locusts, and moving that stuff around is not the most uncomfortable, and certainly interweaving it into a fence like this is not easy to do without getting some thorns. So highly recommended to wear some serious Carhartts, some chainsaw chaps, big leather gloves, and I always wear my chainsaw helmet with the face mask and the ear protection. Makes moving things like that quite a bit easier. So I spent some time reorganizing the brush that I cut down, the slash, and what I'm left with is an extra quarter or even extra third of the field in terms of space that's now going to get planted out. When I initially planted this, I was kind of thinking that I would just use the pollarding from the black locust to feed into this row of persimmons, which I did do, but now I'm thinking, why not just plant out another row in here? And so I removed all of the pollarded material and stacked it up in this fence that's kind of woven into living honeysuckle, blackberries, multiflora roses, and now I'm gonna come through and cut some more of this stuff, honeysuckle, a couple other brushy things, and fold them into the fence as well. And then this little hillside is gonna get planted out with some other fruit trees, maybe peaches, Asian pears, maybe some more persimmons. And this way I won't have deer coming in from the east side. They will be coming in from elsewhere, but I'm gonna try to use some of the material that's left, the plants that are left here, like the multiflora roses. I think I'm gonna try to plant trees at the base of them and fold them back in on themselves. Fold the roses back in on themselves so that it's extra scraggly, and then plant a peach in there. And then I'll have to just closely manage it so that the rose doesn't overtake the peach, but it does grow enough that it protects it and kind of intertangles with it for the first year or so. And then I'll cut the rose out. That will be a process. It won't just be cut it once and then it's gone. Of course, you'll have to cut it a few times. But there's enough roses in here that I can probably start and protect several fruit trees. I initially didn't plant out this hillside just because it was too rocky and uncomfortable to work on, but the more I peel back the growth here and move some rocks around, it's really not that bad. The quote-unquote deer fence up here, the brush fence, is in a place that I probably will never really want to plant anything because it's just sort of ledge here. And if I'm working on the other side of this hill and need to remove brush, I can also lay it up into the same fence. So it'll be a sort of natural divider that I don't anticipate ever having to move. And it really expands the size of this orchard. But it's a nice way of making quick work of all this material. If I had to bring it to a central brush pile, it would have been a lot more moving and handling. If I had to chip it, it would have been a lot more. And I'm never gonna need to access this ridge, so it's really not ever gonna be in my way. I say that now anyway. We'll see what happens. But I think it's a pretty good location for it. So I worked on the fence and the clearing here for most of today and a good chunk of yesterday. And it doesn't look like much right now because it's winter and it's a bunch of sticks, but I am pretty happy with how it came out. There's some spots where it's gonna need more, but that's not a problem because stuff is gonna grow back very quickly. But it really opened the space up quite a bit, and there is a considerable pile of brush that I think is really gonna stop deer from wanting to go through where I've put it, where I've arranged it properly. And I kind of continued it on into this next zone to flank this field as well. Some spots need a little bit more work, but opened up this whole zone. And I think this is really looking not impenetrable, but I don't think deer are gonna opt to go through this anytime soon. And then there's a few spots, well, this one in particular where I left the space. I'm gonna clear this down to the farm road there so I can get through. Some old trash. I'm always cleaning up old trash from my, that's legacy trash from the previous owners. Sometimes there's something useful. There's a set of disc harrows. Nice mulberry that I left. But quite a bit more open on the side of the fields. We'll have a little bit more direction on where the deer are gonna come from, and I can manage that a little bit better. And then this field and into the edge of the forest line there are gonna get planted out this coming spring. So pretty exciting to have moved this space forward a little bit.